Okay, it seems kind of funny to be using this mic when we're such a small group, but I'm Michelle Rogi-Gannon, the director of the Writing Center, and I want to encourage you as you're working on your writing assignments, whether it's working on an essay about poetry or something else, come to the Writing Center, we can help. And also to tell you about our next workshop, which will be on flash fiction, which I think will be really fun. It's very, very short fiction. And Leah McCormick's going to give you the chance to actually practice writing a bit of flash fiction, as well as talking about what is flash fiction. So you'll learn really, I think by the end of that workshop, you'll have a good idea of what, a stronger idea of what flash fiction is. And there will be other workshops coming up as well that I think you'll find of interest. We have them every Wednesday at 7 until the end of the semester. So this workshop tonight, it qualifies for PAW points. And so if you want PAW points, when you get a comment, we'll be distributing a comment card, or for the online people, a survey link. Be sure to include your student ID number on the front of the comment card, so that we can report that information. And if you want an instructor notified that you were heard here, be sure to include your instructor's name on the comment card. And take good notes, pay attention. This will be hands-on, so we're trying to learn stuff. So Professor Lisa Ann Robertson has graciously volunteered to lead this workshop for us, and I know she's getting over sickness, so pay close attention. Her voice may be a bit hoarse. And further ado.
So I need to talk into this for the online people, yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Robertson. You will excuse the fact that I sound not my best. Okay, so as Michelle mentioned, so this is going to go over the basics of how to write poetry. And so probably the first thing that we need to figure out is what is poetry. And it might seem like an obvious answer, but if we think about it a little bit more deeply, it can give us insight into how we might approach writing about poetry. So poetry tends to represent and create emotion in a condensed form. It's often conceived of as a communicative exchange between the poet and the reader. So the poet typically is writing knowing that someone will be reading it, and so is intending to communicate something. It also pays special attention to language, form, rhythm, and sound. So it makes use of these in ways that are perhaps a little bit more obvious or explicit than in some prose writings. And it uses figurative rather than literal modes. So what that means is it uses language that is metaphorical. So what that means is we need to pay special attention to the language and how it's being used. This whole idea of figurative language is actually really an important way to get into thinking about how to write about poetry. Ideally, poetry has the capacity to stimulate a reader's imagination and feeling, right? So we need to then also pay attention to our initial responses to the poem when we read them. And then Samuel Taylor Coleridge has defined poetry as putting the best words in the best order. So what that also means then is that we pay attention to the order of the words and how a poem is structured and what style the writer has used. And writing about poetry really sort of has two parts. One is coming up with an idea to write about, and then the other is having an analytical language to discuss poetry. So I think that, number one can sometimes be the tougher of the two. There's only 3 of you here, but you can answer this question too. But how many people are coming up with a thesis statement or something to say? Yes, me too. So that's part of it. So I'm going to talk about that first, right? So first what you need to do is you need to understand what the poem means, and I mean this both literally and figuratively. Um, we need to have an understanding of what the poem is trying to communicate, or what feeling it is trying to convey. And then we need to figure out how it conveys its message, its feeling, or its figurative meaning, right? So these are the ways, if we look at these things in more detail when we're reading a poem, and think about these things and examine these things, that will help us to come up with some kind of idea to write about. Once you have an idea, then you need to have the analytical language to discuss poetry. And so that involves things like knowing what kinds of poetry exist, knowing the names of the different parts of the poem, and knowing the names of the different techniques used in a poem. And I'll go over some of this, and I have I have a handout that you can take that gives you some of this critical language so that you know how to talk about the parts of a poem. So we're going to talk first about coming up with ideas. And what I ask my students to do, what I myself do, is research within the text, right? So contrary to what you might think, literary analysis is actually evidence-based, right? So you can't just say anything about any text. In fact, you need to support whatever you say about the text with evidence, and this evidence comes from within the text that you're reading or you're analyzing, right? So any interpretation that you have to sort of be able to support it by saying, well, this is what the poem says, or this is how things are arranged within the poem. So since it's evidence-based, we need to collect evidence. So how do we collect evidence? Well, the first thing is to always read with a pen or a pencil in your hand, right? So active reading, taking notes while you're reading. Get into the habit of reading the poem more than once, especially if you're writing about it, but even if you're just coming to class to talk about it, especially if it's not like, a 500-page poem, which do exist, but if it's, a relatively short poem, then you want to read it a couple of times. Poetry, because it's so condensed, you're not supposed to get it right away. It's supposed to take a little bit of time and sitting with it. And then take notes as you read. So what kind of notes do you take then? Well, because poetry is meant to stimulate feeling, you want to sort of record your first impressions, right? So what are your initial thoughts, responses, your questions, feelings about the poem? And again, your first impressions, you don't have any first impressions until after you read it a couple of times. Your first impression might be like, huh? You know what I mean? You might not totally understand it right away, but you just want to jot down, what are the first things you're thinking about, or do you have any kind of mental or emotional response to the poem? And basically, because we're starting in the evidence gathering phase, no one's going to see your notes except for you, so you can write down whatever. So then, because poetry, we pay heightened attention to language, you want to pay attention to significant words. So what kind of words strike you or jump out at you? So basically, what kind of words do you notice? You don't have to know why you're noticing them right away. I encourage students to trust their instincts. Writing the words that seem like they're important or that catch your attention. When you go back later, maybe some of them won't be important, but some of them will be. The other thing you should probably make note of are any words that you don't understand. So if you want to try to figure out what a poem or anything is saying, you need to understand the words. And so it's a good idea to note the words you don't understand, and then maybe when you're done with your first read through, go and look them up. Now because poetry is poetry, quite frequently there are words that I do understand, but I still go and look them up because I want a more nuanced understanding of what the definition is, so that I can really sort of get what it's doing in that poem when it comes time. So because poetry stimulates feelings, so you want to sort of capture what kind of feelings the poem evokes, right? Does it evoke curiosity? Does it inspire you with awe? Do you feel an intimate connection with the speaker? Does it inspire fear? I quite frequently, for whatever reason, teach poems that are about murderers, or people being murdered. So sometimes they're scary, sometimes they're not, but you know, you want to know, sometimes people make note of the fact that they feel confused or creepy is the word that often comes up when I teach in poems. You just want to make note of those kinds of things. Um, and you write a sentence or two or some phrases about the feelings um, that connect them to the parts of the poem and what it is that gives you the feeling. And I'm going to do a little run through before I have you guys work on this yourselves to show you what I mean. So because poetry is communication, you want to pay attention to the characters, right? So you want to know any people in the poem. And also don't forget that if you have a first person um, narrative, if there's an I in the poem, that is a character. Sometimes that might be the only character in the poem. So, you know, sometimes text will say, you know, can you identify with the characters in the poem? Can you relate to any of them? Again, because I tend to teach poems about murders, a lot of my students are like, no way, I can't relate to that person, which is probably good. But so then the question becomes, what do I think about them? Right? So basically, like, who's in the poem and what kind of ideas or thoughts or feelings you have about them. Then pay attention to things like form, rhythm, and word order, right? So these are the structural and the technical features. So, and again, this is before you really know, you necessarily might know some of the language about to discuss these things, but is there anything about the way it is written that you notice? So one of the first things you might notice right away is if it rhymes. Does it rhyme? If it rhymes, what's the pattern? That's called the rhyme scheme. Does it have groups of lines? How many groups of lines? Are they all the same number of lines? If you have a poem that has pretty equal number of lines, you're talking about stanzas then. Some poems don't have, you know, they're all just one. Some don't have any kind of pattern that you can identify really. Does each line have the same number of syllables? And are they roughly the same length, or are they all different lengths? This is beginning into meters. You can literally sort of on your fingers count out how many syllables there are per line and see if there's again, is there a pattern happening? Are there any repeated consonant or vowel sounds, which is alliteration? So a lot of times it's useful to read a poem out loud because you can hear these more easily. Does the poem refer to some other literary text or some sort of historical event or person that's allusion, right? So if it refers to a Shakespeare play, or if it refers to some kind of a historical event that happened, the Civil War, whatever it is, that's allusion, so you have to pay attention to that. Is there anything unusual about the punctuation? Does it not have any? Does it use a whole bunch of exclamation points? Does it make you stop at a weird place? Is it in first person, second person, or third person? What tense are the verbs? Does it use plain language? Does it use elevated language? So these are the things that you can look at in terms of the structure and the technical features. And then you get to content. The question there is, what is the poem about? And I mean that literally, right? Like what you need to understand what is happening literally at the level of a plot before you can jump into more abstract meaning. And because poems are condensed, you kind of want to figure out, so what seems to be happening here. This is sort of the surface level of the language. And what I can say from teaching for many years is that the students tend to underestimate themselves, right? So even when the students don't necessarily have all the details sort of perfectly figured out, there's usually an understanding about what the poem is, what the poem's about at the surface level. People usually can kind of figure it out. Oftentimes, they think that they're not right because they're surprised or because they don't, think that they're good readers. But I would say, again, go to trust yourself. And then when you get to meaning, then the question is, what is this about figuratively, right? So what is the more abstract meaning? What seems to be going on beyond sort of just the simple action or the scene of the story? So what figurative methods are being used to communicate, and what are they communicating? So if you want, let's see, if you want sort of a summary of that, and I think that at this point we can probably hand out we can have something hand out. And one of the handout I would ask you to look at is the one that says coming up with ideas doing research within the text. And the very first thing there is sort of a summary of these questions, right? So a shorthand summary. Do I like the poem? Because if you don't like the poem, that's also important. That might also give you an idea. What words stand out to you? What feeling, let's see if I have a typo, what feeling does the poem give me? What I think about the people represented in the poem? Is there anything about the written that stands out to me? What is the poem about at the level of thought level? What is the poem about at the figurative or that more abstract level? So those are sort of the shorthand of the things I was just talking about, right? So if you answer these questions and you answer them as thoroughly as you can, you're going to start having stuff to work with so that you're not trying to pull an idea out of the air. Okay, so then, so here you have the data. Now, coming up with ideas. So this is the analysis. Now you start to do the why and the how, right? So you start exploring the reasons for your answers. This is the point at which analysis begins. So if you like or you dislike a poem, that's not really going to make a topic for a paper. But if you start looking at the reasons why you like it and you dislike it, and you look at the poem, not necessarily things that have happened in your personal life, but you look at the poem, does it relate to word choice? Is it because of the topic? Is the topic warm and fuzzy? Or is the topic kind of creepy? What kind of a mood is it representing? Who are the characters? So what is it about the poem itself that makes you have whatever your initial response is? How does it represent and evoke certain kinds of feelings, right? So if if you think a poem is sad, then how is it that you think it's sad? Does it relate to word choice? Does it use a lot of sad, gloomy, dark words? Does it have something to do with content? Is it about someone who died? Is that what makes it sad? Are there other kinds of technical or structural features that make it seem sad? Does it does it have a lot of syllables in each line and they're very slow and plotting, and so it's not all that you have to skip the nursery rhyme kind of poem. Then you want to look at what point of view is being represented in the characters, right? If there's more than one character, then whose point of view seems to be represented, and what does the point of view seem to be? What is the effect of the technical? So if it has a rhyme, is it playful? Is it not playful? Does the punctuation make you sort of stop in the middle of a line or in other odd places? If, as you're reading along, does the meaning of a sentence change once you sort of move on to the next line? That's known as enjambment, when you get to the end of a line and it means one thing, and then you keep reading and the meaning changes. And then how do all these different aspects of the poem contribute to a more figurative or abstract meaning that extends beyond the literal words and images? So if you can answer these questions, this can lead you to an interpretation or idea that you can then use as a thesis statement and develop into an argument. And again, like I said, I will quickly model this for you in a second. Let me talk a little bit about the analytical language. So I'm not going to go over every single one of these, but like I said, you have this sheet to take with you, and presumably if you're being asked to write about poetry in a class, your instructor will give you some of the language that she wants you to use. But essentially the language in a poem uses words to create concrete sensory impressions. And these concrete sensory impressions then lead to sort of a more abstract meaning. So you might want to talk about the imagery or the images in the poem. So these would be the descriptions that create a scene in the reader's mind. You might look at the symbols, so are there images then that have significance beyond the sort of literal object or the phenomenon that they're describing? Does it seem like there are images that stand for ideas that are bigger than themselves? You might look for figures of speech. So these are changes in the ordinary sort of denotative meaning of words, right? The as opposed to just the regular dictionary definition, they have extra emphasis to convey greater force or to make an idea more vivid. Um, Usually it sort of works by comparison, showing how things are alike or how things are different. And you probably know at least a couple of these terms. So simile is an explicit comparison that compares the subject, which if you want to impress your professor, you can call that the tenor. And it compares it to another idea or an object, which is known as the vehicle. Metaphors have an implicit comparison. Personification is when an abstract idea or an inanimate object or an animal is given the emotions of a human being. An apostrophe is when the speaker of the poem directly addresses a non-human object or an idea as if it were a human listener. And then you have the speaker. So because poetry is dramatic and performative, it often has a speaker. This is the person who narrates the poem. So it's often an imagined character adopted by the poet, even if it is close to the poet's own voice. You might want to look at the tone, so what does the speaker's attitude seem to be, right? So these are the things that you want to look at, and then when you find them, these are ways in which you can talk about things. If there's comparisons, you might talk about them as similes or metaphors. Form means the structure of the poem, right? And there are certain types of poetry, which you can see here. One of the most common is free verse in the 21st century, the sonnet. There's many more if you up there. Stanzas are recurring groups of lines that are set off by spaces in between the lines. These are a whole bunch of different kinds of stanzas. Again, just so that you know them, just in case you come across, like if you're working with a sonnet, you may come across a quatrain or a sestet or an octave. Or any public grammar. Three is poetry that has sort of an irregular meter, line length rhythm, so it's very difficult to read. And then you have things like rhythm, right? The strong, regular, repeated pattern of the sound. Then you have the metrical feet. So how many syllables are in a line? If it has 2 syllables, that's 1 foot. If it has 6 syllables, that's 3 feet. 8 syllables, that's 4 feet. And you can see the names for each of these kinds of things. There's different kinds of rhymes. You have end rhymes, so which one of the rhymes happen at the end of each line. You have internal rhymes that sound like words within a line. You have near slash imperfect rhymes that kind of sound alike, but don't. There are also sound patterns. I don't want to go through all of these, but I do want to note that they're here for you to look at when you actually start writing. When you actually start writing an essay, you want to have the technical language. Okay, so I want to walk through an example. And the example I want to walk through is on the other piece of paper that you got. The first poem is Sonnet 44. It's written by Charlotte Smith. It's called Written in the Churchyard at Middleton, Sussex. And because my voice is not as happy as it normally is, what I'm going to ask you to do is we'll just start here with the woman in the hood closest to me. And what I'm asking you to do is just read as many or as few lines as you would like. And when you decide you're done reading, it will pass off to the woman in the white sweater, then it will go to the gentleman in the green, then we'll go to Michelle, Liz, Sarah, and I'll take it from here, and if there's more left, we go back to you. Okay?
Oh, I'm sorry. We want to use the mics. Sometimes a little awkward because we have so many.
Otherwise, the people online are just going to sit here and listen.
Yeah, they won't hear you online.
Press by the name you are arches of kites. While the loud equinox its power combines, the sea no more its swelling surge confines.
Like orange shrinking lands, and bonny rocks and bonny rides, the wild blast rising from the water gate.
Drives the huge billows from their heaving bed. Tears from the grassy tombs, the village dead, tears from their grassy tombs, the village dead, and breaks the silent Sabbath of the grave with shells and seaweed mingled on the shore.
Lo, their bones whiten in the frequent wave, but vain to them the winds and waters rave. They hear the warring elements no more, while I am doomed by life's long storm oppressed to gaze with envy on their gloomy rest.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I have read this poem in advance, obviously, and I've taken some notes, and I've recorded my responses, and I have come up with an interpretation. I'm going to walk through this, and as you can see, there's another poem on the page, which you don't need to practice with. So the first question, if I were to ask the first question, do I like the poem? My initial response was yes, I think so. But I also thought that it was kind of weird because it seems to be a poem about dead bodies that are blowing around, and a speaker who says she's envious. So the first time I read this poem through, I was kind of like, okay, what's going on? This is not what I typically expect from a poem that I can see at the bottom there was written in 1784. So then I might ask what kind of words jump out at me, and I've just picked a few, like words like loud and power, and swelling surge, because that's alliterative, wild blast, huge billows, heaving bed, those all sound kind of dramatic. And then village dead, it's like, what, there's dead people in the poem now? And then the word silent, which seems to be very different than loud. Bones whitening, again, I'm wondering like, why are the bones in this poem? Waters rave, raving seems like kind of a violent word. Warring elements, again, sort of a violent, destructive kind of word. And then while I am doomed, so doomed kind of jumps out at me. And then envy, because why do we have envy in this poem? And then rest, right? Because we have just a couple lines of the warring elements, and now we have rest. So it seems like, just from looking at these words that jump out at me really quickly, there seem to be some very opposite kinds of things going on here. You have loudness and silence, you have warring elements and rest. So, already I'm sort of moving into analysis. So what feeling does the poem give me? Well, I think it's a strange poem. I can definitely sort of feel that there's a lot of power going on, right? So the poem actually makes me kind of curious. Because I want to know, why does the sonnet, why is there a sonnet about dead people, right? Why is the speaker so sad? I feel sympathy, right? I feel bad for the speaker because, I'm thinking life must be pretty bad if she's envious of the dead bodies that are flying into the sea. But by the same token, it's a little bit exciting, right? There's lots of violent and moody images, and I kind of like moody stuff. So those are sort of the initial feelings of the poem. When I think about the people in the poem, well, there's really only one character, the speaker, unless I were to consider the village dead as characters. And so I don't really relate to the dead people, but I can relate to the speaker because I've been sad before, I've been depressed, I've been heartbroken, right? So I don't really know why she's so bummed out, but I can imagine what she feels like, and I feel bad for her. Then if I move on, is there anything about the way it's written that jumps out at me? Well, if I look at the punctuation, what I can see is there seems to be a final punctuation at every fourth line, at least for the first two. And then in the last one, we have a colon. So it looks like we have quatrains, right? It looks like we have sets of 4 lines, and then a closing couplet. There's 14 lines here, which I happen to know means that I'm dealing with um, a sonnet, right? I could also look at the meter, or sorry, not the meter, but the rhyme. So we have tides, which rhymes with rides. We have combines and confines, so we have A, B, B, A, right? So I could, if you wanted to sort of map out what the rhymes are, you can start with A, and all the words that sound like that one, you put an A next to, then you move on to B, and you can get to the rhyme scheme in that way. The other thing I noticed is that, this whole poem, we don't really get to the first person pronoun until the very end, right? So the whole poem seems to be about these people being ripped up, these dead people being ripped out of the grave in this huge storm. At the end, you get the surprise where you have this first person pronoun I jumping out, right? I've already mentioned the contrast between sort of wild and violent imagery and peaceful words like rest and silence. So it seems like this whole idea of unrest relates to the storm, and the idea of rest or the dead. And it seemed to line up that way. And somehow these things relate to the speaker. There's a lot of alliteration. So there's S sounds. If I read my footnote, which I always do, there's an allusion to an actual event. So apparently there was a storm in which it was so violent that the graveyard was sort of ripped up and all these bodies were blown into the sea. When I look at the verbs, I can see that they're mostly present tense. So let's see if I can find some. So the wild blast is rising from the western cave, drives the huge billows, it tears from the grassy tombs. I am doomed. I gaze with envy. I gaze with envy. So this is not a poem about something that's happening in the past. This is a poem that we're supposed to sort of be there in the moment with the speaker. And then the other thing I would say is that this doesn't really seem like plain, ordinary language to me. If I was describing a stone to someone, I probably would not say, the loud equinox with power combined, right? I would just say that it was, storming really badly and the wind was howling, right? So this seems to be elevated language to me. So what is this poem about at the literal level? So this is where, taking your notes and turning them into sentences or phrases would be useful, right? So it seems to me what this poem is about is a violent storm that is raging so badly that it tears up a cemetery, it throws all the dead bodies and skeletons onto the shore. The speaker says that it doesn't matter to the dead people because they can't hear the story anymore, so this is happening, but the dead people don't care. And the speaker envies the dead people because they're at peace, which she feels doomed and oppressed by the present life. So that's what's happening at the level of this poem, right? That's the literal meaning. So what could a figurative meaning be? Well, I think that it might be about the human condition, right, and how difficult life can be sometimes, right? Sometimes we don't know peace until we're dead. That's kind of a gloomy way of looking at it, but it's kind of a gloomy poem. So the speaker says that she's oppressed by life's storms. So the storms seem to not just represent nature, right? They seem to be representing something else. They seem to be maybe representing life, right? Those feelings might be stormy too, right? So the storm here is not just a literal thing in the poem, but it seems to be representing the speaker's life, their circumstances, those feelings. And so the outside world of nature seems to be reflecting or blending with the speaker's inner emotional and mental world. And you see how we get from the literal meaning to the figurative meaning? And you see why this is a figurative meaning. It's figurative because the speaker doesn't say, by the way, this storm represents me and my feelings. You know what I mean? The poem makes us work to sort of put those pieces together. So this would be my sample thesis slash intro. I'm a more than one sentence thesis kind of writer. But if I wanted to make this all fancy, what I just said, I would say Charlotte Smith's Sonnet 44 tells the gruesome story of a storm so strong that it rips the village dead from their grassy tombs. You notice how there's a little quotation in there. As the wind howls and the sea crashes against the cliffs, the speaker of the poem states that she envies a piece of the dead who are unaware of the raging element. In my interpretation, the storm in the poem represents the speaker's impressive life circumstances, even though she withholds the exact details. So again, we don't know what's going on in her life, we just know that it seems to be pretty bad. The description of nature also reveals the healing as the poem starts in the natural world with the moon and moves closer to the human world through each of the three quatrains until it culminates with the speaker in the closing couplet. This essay analyzes the progression from the objective to the subjective realms over the course of the poem. I argue that Sonnet 44 blurs the relationship between interior and exterior as nature comes to symbolize the speaker's mental and emotional state. Right? So basically what I did there is I took my notes, my sort of informal sentences and made them into something more cohesive. Now I'm not gonna walk through the entire argument just now. Don't even practice. Yeah. So, but I will really quickly. What I will tell you is, one of the reasons I came up with this is if you look at the first four lines. I guess I am going to walk through it really fast. If you look at the first four lines, we start in outer space, right? We start with the moon, and we're looking at the sea from above. When we get to the next four lines, we are moving in closer to the earth, right? And we're starting to mingle with the human world, but we're mingling with the dead human world. By the time we get to the third quatrain, we are now even closer into the human world, where the bones and the waves are mingling together. And when we get to the very closing couplet, we are now not just in the human world, but we're in one person's sort of world herself, right? So one of the things I would do as I was writing this essay is I would trace the movement of the poem from starting way out with the moon and ending with the human being, the speaker, the I. Is this going to be available for them online?
Yes.
Okay, so this will be available for you online. So what I would encourage you to do is you want it, like this walks you through like how I would, what my evidence would be and how I would write it up. It's not actually written up, but you can look at how I would pull it all together. But what I want to do now is we'll read Ozymandias together, and then the three of you can work together and see what kinds of things you can pull together to figure out what's going on at the literal level of this poem, and then where might we be able to go figuratively from there. So why don't we, actually Sarah very kindly read the last thing, so I will start this time, and then after I read, we'll go in the same order. So Ozymandias. And then a traveler from an antique land who said, two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer and cold command tell that a sculptor well those passions read.
What she has survived scattered on these lifeless thieves, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty and despair.
Nothing besides remains ground and decay. The fossil wreck promises there. The lonely level stands stretched far away.
Okay, has anyone ever read this poem before? Okay, so why don't we go ahead and look at some of these guiding questions. And why don't we work together as a group? So, do you like the poem? What kind of things do you You don't know? Okay, so first read through kind of different to the poem. I don't really actually think that that's unusual, right? Because we don't really learn much poetry reading society so much today. There's a song by the right before. But regardless of whether we like it or don't know, what are some words that you would point out? And I would like each of you to respond to that question. So what are some words that jump out at you? Little pen, kind of, I'll note them. You,
Grounds and decay.
okay. So round and decay, that's down in line 12.
The gold lip.
Okay. Okay. How about over here? Words that jump out.
Old man,
Okay.
the heart that fed,
Exact.
Line 7.
Got it.
The lone and level sands.
Okay. And one of the things that jumps out at me is if you look at these two, in lines 10 and 11, there are these two lines that are bracketed by quotation marks, and it says, "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty in despair." So there's a lot of words where they kind of jump out at me because they sound so arrogant. And so, who are the people in the poem then? Okay, so Ozymandias is one of the people in the poem, right? Who is a king of kings. How do we know this? Because he tells us in line 10. Who else do we have in this poem? So we have a traveler, right? We have a traveler. How do we know? Because I met a traveler from an antique land.
I was just going to add, Janae online picked out the words antique, colossal, and the phrase the heart that fed.
Okay, thank you.
Frank also picked trunkless legs.
Trunkless legs. Okay. Sorry, I should have asked if people had.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's good. Can you tell me the word again? I got trunkless legs.
Yep, trunkless legs, the heart that fed,
Mm-hmm.
antique, colossal.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we have Ozymandias, we have a traveler. Is there anyone else in the poem? The narrator, right? So the speaker. So as far as I can tell, it's 3 people in the poem. Then do you have any thoughts about these people? Do you relate to any of them? Sure. Can you? It helps me as well, because I can't hear it with my phone.
So Ozymandias actually a character who just he was a word from the plot rather than
Okay, that's a good question. And so that what I would do is if I was writing this up, I would write like, I would make a note, is Ozymandias a character or not? This might not be. It might actually just be the topic, right? Or the occasion for the poem. So it's a good question. And it's also a question that, in fact, and I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer because you can make an argument either way. You know what I mean? You can make an argument that looks at him as just being, the guy that the poem's about, or the statue that the poem's about, or you could look at him as potentially being a character, right? It's a good question. So can anyone relate to the traveler? No. What about the speaker? What about Ozymandias, the king of kings? So no arrogant people. Arrogant people over here.
There seems to be another person in the poem, the sculptor.
Oh yeah, there's a sculptor. Good point. Yeah.
I relate to the sculptor.
Okay, why do you relate to the sculptor?
Without words conveying the passions, read the passions of Ozymandias.
Okay,
It's an artistic expression of it.
okay, so you can relate to the sculptor because the sculptor can convey much with no words. Yeah, I guess from that perspective, I would relate to the poet because I convey little with words. Nothing can package things. Okay, you're right. Sorry, it's so funny. I have a whole analysis work on four characters, not for this, but for other things. It's character. So, what do people think about these people in the poem? Whether they're characters or just objects in the poem? What do you think about them?
I was just wondering like why you married the people and also like how would you if you did something to travel.
So, wait, can you speak up just a little bit? Your question is why the speaker what?
Why the narrator is also like an antique plan.
Okay. So, why the narrator is also a okay. And what gives you the impression that the narrator is an empty man? Right?
I can hear it.
Okay, so it's a good question. I mean, here's the thing: is you shouldn't feel like you shouldn't. All the questions are good questions. Why is that a good question? Because you went back and reread it and got greater clarification, right? And when I'm saying what makes you think that, what I'm doing is I'm asking you to go back to the poem to see where you're getting ideas from, because that's what you're going to have to do ultimately in the paper. Go back to the poem to where to see where you got your ideas from. Okay. Um, so, but you might wonder why is the narrator writing about an antique land, right? Why is the setting of this poem an antique land? What does that do for the poem? And so, what is the poem? Let's skip over is anything the way that's written that stands out. But what does the poem seem to be about at the literal level? Like, what is literally going on in this poem? Like, like literally, what is happening in this poem?
A guy who's next one came from, and where he found ruins and the name of those communities came from that which
Okay, so literally, you have a guy who tells a story about traveling through a desert in antique land, who comes across this giant statue that's in ruins, right? It's crumbled. And there's this, one of the things that's not covered is this plaque that has this statement on it about the King of Kings, looking at it, look on my works, he might be, and you have a narrator who's telling this tale, right? So what, based on the words that you sort of looked at, words like antique land, trunkless legs of stone, wrinkled lip, cold command, heart that fed, decay, lone and level sands, what seems might be going on at a more abstract level, right? So the question would be like, why? Why do we have this? What kind of commentary that might the poet be trying to make by setting this poem, by writing a poem about a shattered statue with these words on it in an antique land? So what do you notice about the words on the pedestal? Pardon? So there's some irony to it because it's unexpected, right? Usually if you saw, something that said, look at my works, see mighty in despair, you would expect to see a bunch of works that would make a mighty person despair, right? You would expect to see maybe a bustling city or, lots of industry or a thriving community. But in fact, what you see is this whole, an empty sort of space, right? These lone and level sands that are stretching far away. So it is ironic in that what we're given, the images that we're given don't match what you'd expect to see, accompanied by something that has, a plaque that has these words on it, right? So what would be the purpose then of juxtapositioning this, this sort of arrogant kind of statement against this empty sort of vast, desolate land of sin?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. So we have this irony, right? So why do you think there might be these two very different things put next to each other? So the very different things, one being this desolate landscape, and this other being, something inviting people to look on works and despair, right? So you have these two very, very different things. So what kind of statement do you think the narrator might be making? Okay, and what kind of statement? Okay. Okay. So you don't know who Ozymandias is, and you don't have to necessarily know who Ozymandias is. You could go do research if you wanted, but what do we know about Ozymandias from the poem? And if you go back to some of those words that jumped out at you, what do we learn about this guy? Okay, so he was a king of kings, right? So he thinks of himself as being arrogant. But what else if we go further up into the poem? Based on some of the words that you noticed, what can we say about Ozymandias? So someone noticed wrinkled lip, and someone noticed cold command. So what does that tell us if someone has a wrinkled lip and a sneer of cold command? Okay. Does he seem like a nice person? No. Right? So, even if you don't know a lot about Ozymandias himself, you can make an argument in your paper that in fact this is not a very nice person, right? So your argument was that even though he had all this stuff around him, in the end he ends up pretty empty, right? That was kind of your idea. So one of the things you might talk about is the way in which he is represented as this sort of terrible person who what he values are his mighty works, and yet in the end there's nothing left. What other words, do you have anyone on mind who has anything?
I've asked, but nothing yet.
Okay.
But it certainly seems to me as if he thinks he's going to live forever through whatever he created,
Okay.
except what he's created does not continue.
Okay, so he thinks he's gonna live forever, and that people are gonna see his statue. And when they see his statue, they're gonna be awed by him, but he doesn't live forever. So what kind of a commentary do you think that might be making? So
Human arrogance.
okay, so something about human arrogance, right? It seems to be some kind of a commentary on human arrogance. If we go to the sculptor, right? You pointed out the sculptor. If we look at the sculptor, though, what does remain of this guy's vast empire?
Sculptors depicted him as a jerk.
And that's the thing that remains, right? So you might look at the emptiness of, power and empires that ultimately they go away. You might look at the eternalness of art. That's the thing that stays. Um, so there are a number of things that you could look at. But
We have, sorry to interrupt, we
Okay.
have a comment from online. Janae says, I do not really know what kind of statement the author is trying to make. To me, it seemed as though Ozymandias was really full of himself, but is now not really remembered, known only by the desolate desert.
Okay, so whether the writer was trying to say that or not say that, if you can point to pieces in the poem that support that reading, that's an absolutely that's an argument you can make. So to whoever's online, would you be willing to point to some of the parts of the poem that make you come up with this thesis? Really, as a thesis statement. Okay.
Nothing yet.
Okay. I mean, so this is the process you should go through. So hopefully it would be more productive if you're working on it on your own, right? But you need to generate your first thoughts about the poem. And like I said, I mean, people tend to be kind of timid in bringing out what their thoughts are, but the people who brought up the thoughts here had definitely, these were things that were on target, right? So you bring up, you figure out what seems to be going on in the poem, you figure out what's going on at the literal level, and then, what does the poem need to be about beyond that in a more abstract kind of way? And then when you write the paper, you need to point to those kinds of things. So if you're going to make an argument that Ozymandias is a jerk, you need to support it with evidence from the poem, which would be things like a wrinkled lip and a sneer cold man, which shows that he's not, that he's a sneering kind of person who wants to order people around. You can also look at the fact that he doesn't write a plaque that says "Welcome to my city." He writes a plaque that says, "Look at my works, you might despair." But this is sort of the process that you would use to get to ideas, and then the evidence that you need to put into a poetry paper. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions from anyone online?
Janai responded to your earlier question about what led her to the conclusion she reached. The fact that the traveler did not automatically recognize the sculpture and had to read to know who he was led her to that conclusion.
Okay, so that would be something that you would, potentially put in the paper that, we don't really even find out who the person is until the end. So it's not an immediately recognizable person. So that's actually the kind of process that you are doing is exactly the kind of process you would want. in order to write a paper and to support your interpretation. Right?
Or actually, that talks a little slow.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, 8:02. Well, I guess it is about right, 8:02. So, I'm sorry. I usually have somebody to hand out the comment cards.
Okay.
And any questions that you guys have?
This person there